Hey folks, in this episode I'm going to show you how to make this audio visualizer in Blender's shader editor. This should be a fairly straightforward tutorial to follow along, so without further ado, let's get to it. So open up Blender, we're going to go to Edit, Preferences, and under Add-ons you're going to search for Node and then enable the Node Wrangler here. Once you've enabled that, we're going to click this button, click Save Preferences, and that will ensure the Node Wrangler loads every time we load Blender. I'll then close this window. I'll then navigate to my output tab over here, and I'm going to change my frame rate from 24 frames per second to 30 FPS. I'll also enable render region. I'll just navigate back to my render tab over here. I'm going to use the Eevee render engine. You can use cycles, in fact you'll get better results with cycles. I'll then enable ray tracing. The audio I'm using for this project is my own beat, and I know the beat is 150 BPM, which is 150 beats per minute. And so where my Blender project is running at 30 FPS, we need to calculate how many frames per beat there are. So I'm going to go to this website here, VJam AV software, click support, and then click AV BPM. And this is a FPS to BPM calculator. So my audio track is running at 150 BPM and Blender is running at 30 FPS. I'll then click solve, and that gives us 12 frames per beat. I know that my beat has 8 beats per bar, and I want 4 bars, so 8 times 4 is 32 beats. And so 32 beats times 12 gives us 384 frames, aka 4 bars of 8 beats. So I'll close this window, and in Blender, in the end frame, I'm going to type in 384. In my 3D viewport, I'm going to delete the default cube and delete the default light. I'm going to hit Shift A, I'm going to go Mesh, and I'm going to add a plane. I'll then hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'm going to take my cursor to the bottom left of the 3D viewport until I see a crosshair. I'll left click and drag up and open up a new window. I'll then change this from the 3D viewport to the shader editor, and with my plane selected, I'm going to click New. I'll then rename the material to Audio Viz Material. I'll navigate to my outliner, and I'm going to rename the plane to Audio Viz. I'll navigate into Material Preview in my shader editor. I'm going to hit N to hide the N panel. Maybe I can increase this window a bit, gives a bit more room. I'll then hit Shift A, I'm going to go Input, and I'll choose Texture Coordinate. Shift A, I'm going to go Texture, and I'll choose Noise Texture. Shift A, Texture, and I'll choose Voronoi Texture. I'm going to change the noise texture from 3D to 4D, and I'll do the same for the Voronoi texture. I'm going to connect the object socket from the texture coordinate into the vector of the noise texture. I'll then connect the color socket from the noise texture into the vector of the Voronoi texture. I'll connect the distance socket from the Voronoi texture into the base color of the principal BSDF. On the noise texture, I'm going to change the noise type from FBM to hetero terrain. I'm going to set the scale to 2.5. I'm going to set the detail to 4, and I'll set the roughness to 0. On the Voronoi texture, I'm going to set the scale to 2.5, and I'm going to set the roughness to 0. I'll then hit Shift A, I'm going to go Color, and I'm going to choose Color Ramp. I'll then select this white flag, and go into the color swatch, and I'm going to turn this to black. I'll then click this plus button 4 times to add 4 flags. I'll select the first flag, I'm going to hit it 2 more times. I'll select the first flag again, I'll click it 1 time, and I'll select this one and click this 1 time. So for this second flag, I'm going to set this to a green colour, maybe something around there perhaps. I'll then select this flag, and I'm going to change this to an orange colour, maybe something around there. I'll then select this flag, and I'm going to turn this to a blue colour, maybe something around there. I'll now shimmy these flags around. I'm just going to select this black flag here. I'm going to click plus, and I'll drag this all the way over to here. I'll click plus 2 more times, and for this flag here, in between the 2 black flags, I'm going to change this to a cherry colour, maybe something around there. Okay, so I'm just going to shimmy these flags about. Okay, so just shimmy the flags about until you've got a result that you like. I'm then going to hit Shift A, I'm going to go Colour, and I'm going to choose Hue Saturation Value, and I'll pop that there. I'm going to take the hue all the way to 0. I'll then hit Shift D to duplicate that node, and I'll pop that in between there. And that should restore the hues back to the original state. And the reason I've got the hue saturation nodes is because we're going to be animating the hue using the beat. We'll then hit Shift A, we'll go Displacement, and we'll choose Bump, and we'll pop that there. We'll then connect the distance socket from the Voronoi texture into the height socket of the bump node, and the normal socket from the bump node into the normal socket of the principal BSDF. And on the bump node, I'm going to set the distance to 0.5. I'll then hit Shift A, we go Color, and we'll choose Color Ramp, and I pop that down here. I'm going to connect the distance socket from the Voronoi texture into the factor of the color ramp, I'll then plug the colour socket from the colour amp into the metallic socket of the principal BSDF. I'm then going to click the plus button 4 times, and that will add 4 flags. I'll then select the first flag, and I'll click the plus button 3 more times, and that will add 3 more flags. So this first flag we're going to have as black, this second flag we're going to set this to white, the third flag we're going to set to white, this fourth flag we're going to set to black, the next flag we're going to set to black, these 2 flags we're going to set to white, this flag I'm going to set to black, and maybe we'll add 1 more flag, so I'm going to click the plus button, and for this one we're going to change this to black. So I'm just going to shimmy these flags around, maybe something around there. You don't have to put in the exact same values as what I've got here, you can make yours unique to you, but if you do want the same values as me, I'll just click this flag here, and I'm going to scroll through all my flags so you can see the positions of each flag. So now I want this colour ramp to drive the roughness, but we need to invert it. So I'm going to connect this colour socket from the colour ramp into the roughness socket of the principal BSDF. So I'll hit Shift A, I'm going to go colour and choose invert colour. And I'll pop that in between the colour ramp and the roughness socket of the principal BSDF. And I'll just pop this down here for now. Now these values are black and white. So black would be no roughness at all, and white would be 100% roughness. So that's inverted that. So that means that white is now black and black is now white. But I don't want a completely shiny surface, I want a bit of roughness on the material. So I hit Shift A, I'm going to go colour, and I'll choose colour ramp, and I'll pop that in between the invert colour node and the roughness socket, the principal BSDF. Maybe I'll just shimmy these around. So on this colour ramp, instead of having pure black, which makes no roughness at all, so that'll be 100% shiny, I'll click this colour swatch, and I'm going to change the value to 0.5, just so we've got a bit of roughness there. And you should be able to see that on here. So if I just select this colour swatch, bring down the value, you can see how shiny it is. Maybe for the noodle that's plugged into this bump node, I'm going to hold down Shift, right click and drag, and that will create a reroute node. And I'll just hit G, and I'll bring this over to here, just so we can see where it's going. Before we move on, it's a good idea to save your project. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save my project as like and subscribe. Thanks folks, you absolute legends, and then click Save As. I'm going to take my cursor to the top left of the 3D viewport until I see a crosshair. I'm going to left click and drag across and open up a new window. I'll then change this from the 3D viewport to the graph editor. I'll then hit N to hide the N panel. I'll just navigate into solid view. I'm going to orbit round, and now we'll bring in the audio into Blender. We're going to have to bring it in 3 times. The first instance will be so we can hear the audio in Blender, and the other 2 times will be so we can bake in the wave data. So with my timeline set to 1, and my cursor in the 3D viewport, I'm going to hit Shift A, and we'll navigate to speaker. We'll then navigate to the audio data tab over here. I'm going to click open, navigate to your audio file. I'm going with this P title 150 BPM. I'll leave a link to this where you can download it as a free member on my Patreon. I'll then click open sound mono. And now in the 3D viewport, if you hit play, you should hear the beat. Excellent. I'll then skip back to frame 1. I'll then hit Shift A. I'm going to go empty, and I'll choose single arrow. Navigate to the empty data tab over here, and for the size I'm going to type in 2 meters. I'll then hit Shift D to duplicate, and on your empty data tab over here I'm going to set the size to 4 meters. In my outliner I'm going to rename this first the empty object to empty LF add for empty low frequency add. I'll then rename the second empty object to empty LF multiply for empty low frequency multiply. So with the empty low frequency multiply object selected, ensure that you're on frame 1. We'll then navigate to the object data tab over here, and for the Z location we're going to add a keyframe here. I'll then select the empty low frequency add object, and for the Z location set to 0 and we're on frame 1, I'm going to add a keyframe here. I'll select the empty low frequency multiply object. I'll then navigate to the graph editor. I'll expand these options. I'll expand the object transform, and I'll select the Z location keyframe. I'll then click channel, and we'll select sound to samples. I made this audio frequency band infograph here. For this tutorial, we're going to be using a frequency range between 20 Hz and 90 Hz. So with your audio selected, the lowest frequency, we're going to type in 20, and the highest frequency, we're going to type in 90. I'll then click sound to samples, and that gives us this waveform here. This waveform is a bit jaggedy, and I want to smooth it out. We can't edit samples, so we have to convert this to keyframes. So I'm going to go to channel, and then we'll select samples to keys. I'll just zoom in a bit. I'll then go to key, and we'll choose smooth, and choose Smooth Gaussian, and then we can drag the mouse left or right and that will smooth out the wave. So I'm just going to smooth it out to around about 50%. I'll then navigate to my outliner and I'm going to select the empty low frequency add object. I'll navigate back to the graph editor. I'll expand these options, expand the object transform, select your Z location keyframe. We'll then select channel and we'll choose sound to samples. Again, select your audio track. Blender should remember the last frequency range you selected. So we've got 20 Hz to 90 Hz, but this time I'm going to select accumulate. I'll then click sound to samples. And as you can see, it's baked the audio data in, but this time it's accumulating instead of multiplying. And that's why I added the suffix add. And this one will drive the W factors. Again, this is a bit jaggedy, so I want to smooth this out a little bit. So I'll navigate to channel and I'll choose samples to keys. I want to reduce the density of these keyframes because as you can see, we've got loads and there's lots of little jumps and I don't want that. I want consistency. And by doing this, this should smooth out the animation. So I'm going to go to key, we'll go density, and I'll choose decimate by ratio. And I'll just drag my cursor across until I've got a density that I like. Maybe something around there perhaps. Okay, I'm finished in the graph editor. So I'm going to take my cursor to the top left of the 3D viewport until I see a crosshair. I'll left click, drag across, and we'll collapse that window. I'll then select my plane object. I'm going to hit numpad 7 to go into top view, numpad period to zoom into that object, and I'll increase my shader editor window. I'll also navigate into material preview. For the audio data, which we baked into these two empty objects, we need to bring that data into the shader editor. That's easy enough. So I'm just going to select this texture coordinate. So with this texture coordinate, I'm going to hit Shift D to duplicate. I'll just increase this node, and in this box where it says object, I'm going to select the empty LF add. I'll then hit Shift D to duplicate. I'll pop that here, and in this box I'm going to select the empty LF multiply. So in my outliner, I'll just select one of these empty objects. If you remember, we baked the Z location data. So we need to extract that Z location data in the shader editor. So I'll just select this plane object. In the shader editor, I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to go utilities, we'll go vector, and we'll choose separate XYZ. I'll pop that there. I'll then hit Shift D to duplicate. I'll then connect the object socket from this texture coordinate into the vector of the separate XYZ, and the object socket from this texture coordinate and plug it into the vector of this separate XYZ. And now we've got access to these Z components here. And now I can connect this Z socket into the W factor of the noise texture and the W factor of the Voronoi texture. And now if you were to hit play, you should see that the pattern changes with the beat. Excellent. Now depending on what kind of audio you have, this might only change on beat and you might not have the gradual changes in between the beats. If that is the case, there's a quick fix for that. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and I'm going to right click through these two noodles. I'll just hit G, just bring this across over to here. I'm going to box select all of these. I'll just hit G and drag this across over to here. I'll then hit Shift A. I'm going to go input and we'll choose value and I'll pop that up here. I'll then connect this value socket to this reroute node here. And if I hit play, nothing's going to happen. So we need to add a driver to this value node. So in here, I'm going to type in hash frame divide by 25, just as a reference point. I'll then hit play. Okay, that's moving way too fast. So I'm going to replace the 25 with 100. I'll hit play. Still moving too fast. So maybe I can set this to 250. I'll just hit play. Okay, this will give us motion in between the beats. So I'll hit Shift A. I'm going to go utilities. We'll go math and we'll choose maths. And I'll pop that in between there. We're going to keep it set to add. I'll then connect the Z socket to the bottom socket of the math node. I'll just skip back to frame 1. I'm going to hit play. And you should have a similar motion to this. Excellent. I'll just box select this reroute node. I'm going to hit G. Just bring this over to here for now. If you remember, I said that I wanted to animate the hue based on the audio. So all we're going to do is we're going to connect this add node to the hue on the last hue saturation value node. Maybe on that noodle, I'm going to hold down Shift, right click and drag. I'll just hit G, just bring this up to here. Hold down Shift, right click and drag. I'll just shimmy this over to here, just so we can see where it's going. There's one more element I want to animate using the audio, and that's this randomness value here on the Voronoi texture. And we're going to be using this empty low frequency multiply for that. And the reason why we're using the multiply function instead of the add function is because this only goes from 0 to 1, whereas a W factor continues onwards forever. So I'm going to connect the Z socket from the separate XYZ into the randomness socket of the Voronoi texture. If I was to hit play, we're not going to really see what's going on because we've got everything else being animated at the same time. So I'm just going to hold down shift, right click and drag through these two noodles. I'll just hit G, bring this down over to here. I'll then hold down control, right click and drag. And that disconnects the animation data from these elements here. So now that we've disconnected these nodes here from the tree, we have isolated these two nodes so we can see exactly what this is doing. So if I hit play, you'll see not much is happening. And the reason why is because the values on this Z isn't going from 0 to 1 like the values on the randomness socket. So we have to remap those values. So I'll just skip back to frame 1. So we hit Shift A, we go Utilities, we go Math, and we choose Map Range. And I pop that in between the Separate XYZ and the Voronoi texture. On the Map Range node, I'm going to disable Clamp. And as a starting reference, I'm going to set the 2min to 1 and the 2max to 1.5. I'll then hit play. Okay, that seems to be working quite well for me. You may find that your animation clips, so for example, if I bring the 2 minimum down to, let's say, 0.3, and I hit play, you see it clipping like that. Just keep increasing your 2min incrementally until you've got something that works. For me, a range of 1 and 1.5 work quite well. So now that we've got the map range dialed in for the empty LF multiply, I can now reconnect the empty LF add data back into the circuit. I'll just hit play to make sure everything's working okay. Excellent. Obviously, you can bake in your higher frequencies, you can bake in your mid ranges, and you can use that to drive your roughness. You can use it to drive the detail, scale, offset, distortion, or any of the other values. Also, experiment with different textures and whatnot. So all the fundamentals are there. So I've made a few of these with displacement by adding a displacement node here, and then you go to your material settings, navigate down to where it says settings, and then where it says displacement, you can change it from bump only to displacement only. You'd have to subdivide your base mesh for the displacement to actually happen. Okay, I think it's time to crack on with the lighting. So I'm just going to reduce this window. I'm going to hit Shift A, I'm going to go light, and I'll choose point light. And with this light selected, I'm going to set the Y location to, let's say, 1 meter, and I'll increase the Z location to 0.25 meters. I'll just hit numpad 1 to go into front view, just to ensure that we're above the plane. Okay, excellent. I'll just hit numpad 7 to go into top view. I'll then go into rendered view. I'll navigate to my world settings over here, and I'm going to reduce the strength to 0. And with my point light selected, I'm going to go to my light data tab down here. I'm going to change the color to blue, maybe something around there, and maybe I'll increase the power to 250 watts. I'll increase the radius to 0.25 meters. I'll then hit Shift D to duplicate. I'm going to hit Escape. I'll then hit G, Y. I'm going to hold down Control to snap it to the grid. And I'll bring it down to around about there. So we're at negative Y 1 meter. I'll then change the color from blue to orange. I'll then hit Shift A. I'm going to go light and choose point. I'll navigate to the Object Data tab over here. And I'm going to set the Z location to, let's say, 2 meters. I'll then go to my Light Data tab over here. And I'm going to set the power to 1000 watts. I'm going to increase the radius to 2 meters. In fact, I'm going to go to my Object Data tab over here, and I'm going to increase the height to 5 meters on the Z location. So with that point light still selected, I'm going to go to my Light Data tab over here, and maybe I'll reduce the radius to 1 meter. I'll then select the Audio Viz object. I'm going to hit numpad 7, numpad period, and that will center the object to the 3D viewport. I'll then hit Control Alt numpad 0, and that will align the camera to the 3D viewport. I'll then select the camera. I'm going to go to my Camera Data tab over here. I'm going to set the focal length to 70 millimeters. Navigate to my Object Data tab over here, and you can tweak the values on the Z location to ensure that everything's in frame. So I'm going to have mine framed at, let's say, 3.75. I'll just hit Control S to save the project. I'll then navigate to my output settings over here. I'm going to scroll down to output. I'll then click this folder icon. You can then choose the file location where you want to save your image sequence, and then click accept. Select a file format of your choice. I'm going to go with a file format of OpenEXR with a codec of DWAA lossy, and that will decrease my file size whilst increasing dynamic range. I'm also going to set this to RGB because I'm not using alpha, and I'm going to go with a color depth of half. Alternatively, you can just go for a file format of PNG. That should be more than sufficient. I'll navigate to my render tab up here. I'm going to scroll down until I see color management, expand these options, select your preferred view transform. I'm going to go with ACES 2.0, and I'll increase the gamma to 1.5. Finally, I'm going to select the audio visualizer object. I'll just increase my node editor. I'm just going to check my ray tracing options down here. Maybe I can set the resolution to 1/1. I don't think this would make too much of a difference because this is a flat plane, so I could disable ray tracing and you won't really see much difference. I'm just going to keep it on though. If this plane had displacement, then the ray tracing definitely would affect it more. I'll also navigate to where it says performance and I'll enable high quality normals. I'll then hit Ctrl S to save the project, and then it's simply a case of hitting Ctrl F12 and that will render out your image sequence. From there you take the image sequence and the audio into a video editor and then render it out as a video. Join me on Patreon as a free member and you'll have access to this file alongside other Blender files from previous tutorials. That's a tutorial in a nutshell. I hope you found this useful. If you did, please click like and subscribe. It really helps my channel. Have a great day, level up, and thanks for watching.